Okay, this is Kenneth 14621, and I just want to make a rant about video games. Okay, now I know a lot of you don't play video games that watch my channel, but I think you might be interested in hearing this rant because this rant is about old video games. I mean, who didn't play video games when they were a kid? I mean, I know there were people, but a lot of people played video games when they were a kid. Okay, so let me tell you this. Video games now, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, okay? It's a good thing. I'm delighted at how video games are now. I'm delighted. They get better and better every year. But video games now are nowhere near as hard as the older video games. In fact, the farther and farther you go back, the harder the video games were. I mean, I can say that all the way back to NES. I mean, I played Atari, but I didn't have an Atari. I was old enough. I was really in the Atari era, but my family was like so Christian, they didn't think like, you don't understand. They were so, the types of Christian we were, they just, I don't know this for a fact, but it was probably something that the preacher said was wrong to do, was play video games. For any reason, maybe they thought it was just bad for me, but I didn't have a video game when I was really young. But I got one when I was like 5 years old, something like that. And that was 1987. Okay, maybe I had one when I was, maybe I did have one when I was young. But I think I was 5, at the least I was 3. But I don't know. I was old enough to have been in the Atari era. I think I got one when I was 5 because I think Nintendo came out in 1987 or something like it. But that was my first Nintendo system, or my first. See, I played Nintendo for so long, I still say Nintendo, even when I'm talking about the PlayStation sometimes. But my first gaming system, I don't know what the coolest thing. My first gaming system, video game console, was the Nintendo. Not the Super Nintendo. The Nintendo is also known as the NES. You have the NES and you have the Super NES. The SNES. See what I'm saying? So anyways though, but let me tell you something. Back then, I had a game, okay? And I'm not ashamed to say this because there are like a billion people that are as old as me and remember going through this. Okay, I had a video game and I had it for like 8 years and I never figured out how to beat that video game. It's not because I suck at video games. I only had like 10 video games, okay? For like 8 years, I had 10 video games. So I played them over and over and over again. Even the crappiest of video game players could have beat a game in that amount of time. When you're talking about newer games. But you see, back then we didn't have the internet. There was literally no way to figure out how to beat a game. And they didn't have checkpoints in games back in them days. The only thing they gave you, like, okay, like, the game was the Ninja Turtles game, okay? And you had 4 characters, okay? And when those 4 characters died, that was it. You had 4 lives to beat the entire game. And so I didn't even figure out how to beat the game. I had long forgotten about it. I mean, I was probably over 30 years old before I really figured out how to beat this game. I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, so what? You know, I I was a kid, you know. But see, there was a spot in the game where, see, the thing about it was the game was really, I mean, it was like you play it a million times and you get to this level once. And when you get to this level, it's like a huge map. And there's little sewage places and little buildings that you go into and drop down, like in the sewer or whatever. And there's like hundreds of them, like hundreds of little levels. And so you have to go down each and every one before you figure out, like you have to go down 100 holes. And each hole is a whole level. And when you drop down that hole, you have to play that entire level. And these levels are tough. I mean, you might make it through 2 or 3, but you're not making it through 4 or 5 of these levels with the same life. Okay, so you had to make it through these levels. And there's like 100 of them. And the whole game, they have pitfalls. And you have to jump over the pitfalls, right? Just the way it is, you know? And, anyways, though, which you'll never understand what I'm saying. I mean, if you're not old enough, you might as well just turn this video off right now. But, so anyways, though, so you drop down 100 holes, and at some point, in the years I had the video game, I was so pissed off that I couldn't get past this level. I remembered, I marked on a sheet of paper every hole I went down, so I made sure every hole I had been down. And there was one hole out of 100 that was the right hole. And in this little hole, if you survived long enough, it was one of the hardest holes to drop down. And the game wanted to fuck with you. They didn't want to make this game fun at all. Some of the holes were treacherously difficult. And you would drop down and you would die if you dropped in that hole. I mean, some of the holes, I had to drop down and die and kill all my men and then start the game all over and play for hours just to get back to that level. And then drop down the hole again and then lose my 4 lives. And then finally, like on the 5th time, I beat that hole. So you go in a hole, you beat it, and you pop out of the hole when you're done. But, so anyways, so there was this one hole that you had to drop down. And in this hole, for some strange reason, there was a pitfall that you couldn't jump. It was impossible to jump. But see, there's pitfalls. There's a pitfall here. There's like 3 or 4 pitfalls on this one screen. And one of these pitfalls, you're supposed to walk straight over. Like Indiana Jones, you know, throw some sand down, right? You have no sand. And you have to walk straight across to get past that level. And there were lots of games like that were very cryptic and very like, just, it would take like, see, the thing of it is, and we didn't know this back in the day, video games had just started out. You know, we didn't know anything about them, but you had to have And see, back then, knowledge was hard to come by. You couldn't just scroll the internet for hours until you found your answer. You just went about your day. And whatever you had to do, that's just what you did. You didn't worry about learning anything or anything like that. So anyways, though, so there were lots of games like that. I come to find out. And I knew it was that way. I mean, I knew some games were just unbeatable, but just games where, they're like you kill these birds all game, right? You kill them and you kill them and you kill them and they're flying by and you kill them and you can walk past them. You can try to get past them. You can just walk past them. You don't even have to kill them. And so you're killing these probably, you've probably killed hundreds of birds by the time you get to this level. And all of a sudden, this one bird comes by, looks exactly like it's the same bird. It's exactly like the other birds that came by. But when this one bird comes by, you have to jump into it and hit it just right to get to the next level. I mean, games were just like that, And like, I'm sorry, but there will never be a game that hard ever again. Because any game they come out with, you can look on the internet and figure out how to beat it. I mean, within several days of it coming out, there will be videos showing you how to get past every single part of the game. And so what I'm saying is, we went through things that no one will ever have to go through again. And will never go through again. I mean, when it comes to video games. And you can't just take an old video game and play it now and understand what we were going through. Because it wasn't just the video game. It was the whole just 80s in general, I mean, it was just, everything was hard and, you had brown cars and just, I mean, a lot of people that played those old games never played video games again. I have a friend, and literally, the last game system he ever played was a Super Nintendo. Or he had Atari, he had Nintendo. I don't even know if he had a Super Nintendo. He never played them again. Talk about bitter. Bitter to the core. Seriously. Think about having a game for 8 years and never beating it. And then you go and you play it again, and you still don't beat it again. You get back to that same level, and you die on the same part for 8 years straight. Think about that. And you should be glad that people like me continued playing games like this. Otherwise, video games wouldn't even be here now. If everyone just quit playing them, they would run out of money. They wouldn't even have them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know. I'm not telling you this so you can feel the same way I feel. I mean, I guess I am, but there's really no way that you could feel that same way. I mean, you would have to have lived through the same error that I lived through. But I'm just telling you, I mean, this is why I started thinking about this. I'm subscribed to this guy, okay? He's about my same age. And he does vintage video game videos, where he plays old video games so old people like me can watch them and be like, haha, I remember that, or whatever. So people get on there. Like, it's widely known that this guy sucks at video games, but he really doesn't. It's just, like, there's probably more people alive now that aren't as old as him that are as old as him or older that have never played these video games. They've never lived through that time, and they're telling this guy, why are you dying? Like, why can't you beat this video game? The guy, I'll let you know who it is. It's James the Nintendo Nerd. That's who he originally was. He's still the same guy, but he changed his channel name from that to Cinemassacre. So, this guy is an expert video game player. I'm telling you. He is an expert at these types of games. And if he can't do it, you can't do it. I mean, the only way you could do it is if you went on YouTube and figured out some sort of cheat code or some sort of easy way to do it. He doesn't like to do it that way. He's trying to play it the old-fashioned way so that we can get the feeling like it's the old days. You know what I'm saying? But, like, young kids have this attitude like those games weren't hard. And like, it's so disrespectful, and it's such an ignorant thought and an ignorant thing to say that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. When I tell a kid I didn't beat a video game for 8 years, guess what they say when I ask them, what do you think you would have done? Do you think you could have beat it? Immediately they say, oh yes, I beat a video game within a couple of days. The video games now are like, they're like super duper easy. You have a checkpoint every 5 feet. How can you not beat it? That means you can try the same level 1,000,000 times. You can literally try the same 5 feet, the same boss, the same little part 1,000,000 times. You can try that same part. Like 10 times within 1 minute. 10 times within 1 minute. Try playing a game, and if you can't get past a certain part, you have to start back from the beginning and do all that shit over again and play for hours just to get back to that same point, just to try that one little part a second time. Not a third or a fourth time. A second time. A second time. Now as much as I do, it takes about 10 tries to get past some parts on some of these video games. So let's say you play 3 hours to get to that part. 3 hours times 10, that's 30 hours. You can't even stay up that long. And if you're a kid that's going to school and has stuff to do, 3 hours is a rare thing. You know what I'm saying? You might have 3 hours to spend on a video game twice a week. 3 hours twice a week? That's 5 weeks. That's over a month just to get past one part. That's just considering that you do get past it that 10th time, and that you don't get frustrated and throw that freaking game in the trash, or just don't play it again for a really long time, or even never play it again. See what I'm saying? I mean, this is a really long video, and I'm sorry, but really this video, I mean, it's only 20 minutes. So, if you get through watching this video, you still don't know what I'm talking about. We lived through this stuff for years and years. If you watched this video and it were 15 years long, then you would understand what I went through. See what I'm saying? Like, I'm not, I mean, I just, so, anyway, so leave in the comment box. I'm just trying to, I wish, and one of the reasons why I would make a video like this is I wish that games were hard again. I wish that there were some games that were hard that you couldn't just look on the internet and figure out how to beat. So that then people wouldn't laugh at me when I tell them I had games I couldn't beat. So I guess that's the bottom line of this video. I didn't mean to make it so long, but there you go. A little history on video games for you. Anyways, though, if you watch this whole thing, heads up to you, friend. Thank you very much. Kenneth14621 signing off.